Pure, simple, unadulterated filmmaking powered fun. I cannot think of a movie that embodies these words more than The Mummy. The 99 version, that is, not whatever this fucking thing was. In the 23 years that this movie has been out, I must have literally seen it dozens of times. Damn, do I wish Letterboxd had been a thing when I was a kid so that I would know the exact number. Anyways, The Mummy is an action-adventure movie starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz, and it's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. It's a masterclass in action-adventure filmmaking, and if you disagree, well, all art is subjective of course, and I might be currently intoxicated with nostalgia, but I am still right. Our story begins with Imhotep, high priest to the pharaoh, and the titular mummy of our story. Imhotep gets a bit frisky with the pharaoh's mistress, Anaxunamun, and after the pair is caught together, Imhotep kills the pharaoh and as a consequence gets sentenced to be brutally mummified and eaten alive by scarabs. Because you know, Egyptians take it personally if you kill their pharaoh after boning his mistress. 3,000 years later, Evie, a librarian and Egyptologist, eager to prove herself on the field, bands together with her brother Jonathan and Rick O'Connell, played by a prime Brendan Fraser, on a quest to find Humanaptra, the city of the dead, which, unbeknownst to them, also happens to be the resting place of Imhotep. Upon arrival, Evie accidentally awakens Imhotep and releases his curse upon the world. The rest I will let Rick O'Connell himself summarize.
Rescue the damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, and save the world.
Huh?
It's the kind of premise that sadly is rarely seen nowadays, even if it still makes Hollywood boatloads of money whenever it's used. It sets The Mummy apart from present-day action-adventure movies, tone, characters, and pacing above all else. But first the tone, an ingenious mix of horror and comedy. The horror, which for a PG-13 movie can be surprisingly disturbing at times, results in a pure injection of an authentic sense of stakes and urgency, the kind that is a dying breed these days. I mean, can you even imagine any of these scenes in a modern action-adventure big-budget PG-13 movie? By pushing the horror envelope, the movie creates a menacing villain, and more importantly, a sense of tension and urgency that keeps its audience engaged throughout the story, which is of course absolutely essential to any adventure narrative, something a lot of filmmakers and studios would do well to remember these days. The comedy, of which modern-day big-budget movies have far too much of, works but never to the detriment of the story or the aforementioned stakes. The story is self-aware but never obnoxious, the humor is ever present but subtle. Little moments like these are downright hilarious.
Spring clean.
Nice shot.
Hey! O'Connell! It looks to me like I've got all the horses!
Hey, Benny! Looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the river!
Yet none of these moments ever undermine the villain or the stakes. They simply punctuate an already enjoyable thrill ride with a dose of comedy to lighten the mood, without sacrificing any of the underlying layers. It is far too easy to imagine a 2023 version of this movie, where there's an MCU-like scene played for laughs, revolving around the mummy interacting with modern technology, which would of course deflate the tension immediately. This movie knows what it is, but it's not for 1 second ashamed of itself. Now onto the characters. First we have Rick O'Connell, the archetypal masculine hero, a rugged, charismatic, physically capable adventurer, skilled in combat, survival, and general badassery. He is played superbly by Brendan Fraser, who, in my not-so-humble opinion, really missed out on a massive big-budget career as a leading man in action movies. His blend of humor and sheer awesomeness works to create a terrific protagonist. Brendan might be winning Oscars in fatsuits these days, but once upon a time he was Indiana Jones for a whole millennial generation. I'm not exaggerating either. I don't think anyone has ever gotten as close to Harrison Ford's iconic performance as Brendan Fraser did. I mean, it takes a special something to pull off this scene. Brendan gave it his all in these movies, racking up multiple injuries and destroying his body in the process. Case in point, during the filming of this scene, they tightened the noose around Brendan's neck for real to make his reaction more realistic, and the poor man actually blacked out and almost died as a result. As insane as it sounds, it does speak to the dedication behind crafting this movie. As for Evie herself, she's played by Rachel Weisz. In case you didn't know, she is a librarian.
I am a librarian.
Oh boy, yeah.
Even though the movie might call Evie a damsel in distress, she's not really one, at least not in the traditional stereotypical sense. She's brave, determined, and undoubtedly the smartest character in the story, even if she can be a bit clumsy at times. I would call Evie a strong female character, but that might trigger some studio out there to remake The Mummy with an all-female cast. So instead, I will just say that Evie is a strong character, played by a terrific actress, whose chemistry with Brendan Fraser is unmistakably off the charts. I mean seriously, this two could have made a killing back in the early 2000s if they had made a romantic comedy together. Someone had to have been sleeping on the job if none of their agents ever suggested it. As to the Mummy himself, he is played by Arnold Vosloo. The character is admittedly a bit over the top and one note, but hey, if you were slowly devoured by flesh-eating bugs, you would probably hold some grudges against the world too. The rest of the cast is comprised of colorful side characters full of enjoyable interplay, whether it's Evie's comic relief brother Jonathan, played by John Hannah, or even Benny himself.
Well, if it ain't my little buddy Benny, I think I'll kill you.
Think of my children.
You don't have any children.
Someday I might.
Shut up.
As for the pacing, well, it bears repeating, but bear with me. It is perfect, the movie itself never drags and is effortlessly rewatchable. Even after all these years, action scenes are entertaining without ever extending their welcome, and work to break up the suspense every once in a while without taking over the story. Even simple dialogue scenes like these are still full of personality, due to effective use of blocking.
Well, then we are just going to have to find some immortal ones.
There goes that we again.
Listen to me, we have to do something. Once this creature has been reborn, he's...
If you've made it this far in the video, you've probably detected a common theme. The Mummy is great and its modern counterparts these days not so much. Well, one of the big reasons for that is focus. The Mummy had one screenwriter who also happened to be the director of the movie, Stephen Sommers. It represents a single coherent artistic vision, as opposed to some of the committee-approved, factory-made products that pass for movies these days, whose credits almost without fail contain not one, not two, but a total of 3 screenwriters. When it comes to the score, let's just say that it screams adventure. I'm no music theorist, so I can't really expand much more than that, other than to say that it perfectly fits the tone of the movie. As to the CGI, it actually holds up surprisingly well. I mean, sure, it looks a bit wonky in places when compared to modern CG, but not nearly as much as one would expect for a movie that is decades old at this point. All we can do is judge it by its time and budget, and on that metric it's got my seal of approval. The same sadly cannot be said for the infamously atrocious CGI in its sequel. That CG aside, The Mummy Returns is still an enjoyable movie, retaining some of the same elements that work in the original. However, in true sequel fashion, the story is kind of a mess. By the way, did you know The Rock actually ate a real scorpion in this scene?
That's gross.
When it comes to the third one, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, well, let's just say that it's both the most anticipated and disappointing movie of my coming-of-age years. Even my 13-year-old self could not like this movie, and I liked Michael Bay's Transformers back then. Unsurprisingly, it was not directed by Stephen Sommers, who helmed the first two.
No way!
So that's it, The Mummy is one of my absolute favorite movies, in case you couldn't tell. Thanks for watching this stream of unintelligible nostalgia, I guess.
See you, chump.